Okay, everyone, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. To have a really cool little double feature follow-up for you guys from the brand Hanhart. A little about them, they're originally founded back in Switzerland in 1882, then later relocated to Germany in 1902. They're best known for their historic pilot's chronographs, and you can see that really what they're known for and their signature DNA are both represented beautifully here on the left-hand side with the Pioneer Preventor HD12, and on the right-hand side with the 417 ES 1954 Flyback Panda. Now, both of these watches are part of my permanent collection, and I have to tell you, this HD12 on the left really made a case for kind of that one and done type of experience, but I have to say, after adding the Flyback Panda, I'm feeling like this might just be the ultimate 1-2 punch, guys. I mean, you're getting that German heritage with, of course, some fine Swiss lineage as well. And these are just unique pieces. And I can just appreciate that. They're just something a little bit different. Of course, you have to kind of like that more historical design aesthetic, but I do think that these are still quite versatile, even in more contemporary settings, thanks to these very monochromatic colorways with just the right pop of color with the red accents on each. So I think they both stand out individually really well, but I think together. So if you have one or the other, you might want to consider getting that other because they are just so much fun, again, sitting next to each other. They're both 39 millimeter timepieces, and they've both been sized down from larger kind of beginnings in terms of, pilots' watches were typically fairly large, and chronographs, whether they're in the pilot genre or not, are still relatively large. So having these options that are a little bit more sized down for daily wear and versatility, I think make these very, very interesting. In terms of the price points, for the three-hander, you're looking at around $1370 as configured, US dollars, and then on the Flyback Panda side, about $3,100 as configured. And man, these are both pretty deadly at those price points. Some of you might be thinking it's a little pricey, but I think when you consider everything that comes along with these pieces, right? When you think about the hardened steel, when you think about the flyback capabilities, or you think about the column wheel movement, I mean, there's a lot to love here. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get these pieces in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, so obviously stunners on their own. These are absolutely handsome timepieces. And although they are both 39 millimeters in diameter, I will say that they wear a bit different. I think at least visually you can see here, even though they're the same dimensions, probably this chronograph is maybe appearing a little bit smaller just because it has more going on the dial, right? It has two sub-dials there versus the more open layout here. Also, it's going to be a bit thinner, which is going to also affect the way that the weight is spread loaded on the wrist. So this is going to feel more like, I'd consider a nice balance, kind of full-sized, everyday pilot's watch, whereas this is going to feel more like I would consider more of a compact style. So if you're looking for something that was going to be a little bit smaller wearing, this is one that you would want. Of course, if you have a smaller wrist, you're going to want to go for this regardless. But if you're somebody that does like something that has a bit more of an elegant and more refined feel, this 39 millimeters is going to wear a bit different than this 39 millimeters. Whereas here, I think some people might still consider this a bit large for a three-hander versus here, 39 millimeters on a Flyback chronograph. Let's go ahead and talk about Flyback. This is what Flyback means. So this is your typical functionality for a normal chronograph. You start it, you stop it, you reset it. A Flyback allows you to let it roll and instant flying back. So it flies back and it keeps going. So essentially you can keep monitoring down to that split second if you're timing multiple instances. So I think that is very, very cool. And how useful is it, guys? I mean, how useful is it to be able to have 100 meters of water resistance. I mean, it is useful, but it's a bit overkill as well. But for some reason, you know, us watch idiot savants, we just like what we like. And I'm within that camp as well. And both of these have additional water resistance. I mean, for a pilot chronograph to have 100 meters of water resistance, that is very, very confidence inspiring. Now here you're going to get it even to another level, because this is really ascended from just a typical pilot's watch to that everyday adventure piece with 15 atmospheres or 150 meters of water resistance. So that's going to be very nice. You're also going to get that, again, confidence inspiring screw down crown, which is going to help. Here it's going to be a push pull crown, but I think it makes sense for the theme, especially considering that this is a manual movement versus this being an automatic movement. So you're going to have to wind this one manually versus here you can wind it manually, but basically you wind it, you get it going, and then you wear it, and then the rotor inside acts as a pendulum and will start winding that mainspring. So two gorgeous watches. I mean, you can see the family resemblance here. I love that kind of, you know, Panda layout, but then at the same time, it just contrasts really beautifully against that really nice black setup on the left. So yeah, again, it's just that idea of a 1-2 punch, two watches that you can own that just go so well together. Now, when you think about a pairing like this, I would say like the mainstream comparable would be how, I mean, they're not from the same brand, like this, you know, these are two Hanharts, but I would say similarly, you'll probably notice if you've been into the watch collecting scene for a while that so many people love a Rolex Explorer, and so many people love the Omega Speedmaster Professional. So the Moonwatch and the Explorer are kind of, you know, if you have the funds, are de facto choices for that 1-2 punch, right? They offer something in terms of history, in terms of lineage, but also in terms of versatile everyday styling capability that make them great watches to own on a functional level. So I would say this could be a similar kind of draw, but of course for a lot less money and possibly more capabilities, which I think is great. Of course, you're not going to have the luxury of an in-house movement, but I will say that these movements that they're using from Sellita are really quite outstanding, even to a higher level here for the Flyback, because it's not just your standard Sellita. It's actually part of their manufacturer line. So these are known as the AMT 5100M movements from Sellita, and these are quite special. And these are special even when they're not in Hanharts. These are special when a micro brand is willing to pay enough money to put into it, and they are still not cheap then. Here, you're going to get it with a certain amount of heritage as well. And, you know, the price premium kind of comes along with the movement choice with those extra capabilities. Again, this isn't going to be your standard, you know, even down to the fact that this has a beautiful, you know, column wheel movement, which is great, which means you're not going to be adding any wear and tear, and it's just going to feel very, very nice and crisp. There's no juddering as the hand starts and stops. It is very precise. Ooh, and then you got that, which you're going to pay a lot more money for if you want to have a Flyback in-house setup. So both of these are pretty outstanding. One thing that the HD12 has is that HD12 hardened steel. And it also does even have a layer on top of that for extra hardness. So the combination there makes this just deadly in terms of an useful everyday timepiece. I wish that this had those elements as well, but you know, one, it's not really in theme, and two, it would definitely add to the cost. So I think in this case, especially if you're going to be pairing them, sure, you can have one that's going to be kind of ever flawless in terms of its layout and not being able to pick up scratches. But this one will have a bit, you can pick up a little age and patina as you wear it, and you might knock it around. But I think it will wear really, really well just because of this gorgeous, timeless layout. I mean, look at how handsome everything is, how sharp this is. It almost makes you wish they would do a white dial variation of the HD12, because I mean, look at how sharp the black outlining is around the numerals. That is gorgeous. I know some people's complaint about this watch has been that the numerals may be a bit too thick, and it looks a little bit overly sporty versus something like the Hamilton Murph, which is going to have a bit of a thinner font set. Of course, it's also going to have much weaker lume by comparison, but here you're going to get stronger lume, and you're going to get just a bolder typeface, even though it's a very similar aesthetic. But you can see here, still quite bold, but just with a little added refinement in terms of the sharpness of the execution on the dial. So with that said, let's actually get these pieces on the wrist and see how they wear. Ooh, okay guys, I mean, I know this is a popular watch and everything, but there's a reason for it. It just hits. I mean, I love that in that 39mm silhouette, it's not overly overpowering or overly large for an everyday three-hander. But of course, with that background of aviation, you want something that doesn't feel petite. And this doesn't feel that at all. I mean, this feels, I'd consider it quite full-sized versus some people might consider it more of a medium wear. I think this wears absolutely beautifully. Ooh. Now, on the other side, check that out. Very bold, very beautiful. My goodness, this is one where even non-watch aficionados will get a look at something like this, and they will most likely be drawn in. I mean, that classic Panda layout, and then you get into some of those finer details, the pop of red there on the turning bezel. There's just a lot to love. Ooh. And again, guys, I've done reviews of both of these watches, so if you want to see the full dedicated reviews for either, definitely check the, of course, the channel history. I'll try to leave them linked at the end of the video for anybody that sticks around that long. But my goodness, look at these pieces. Just fantastic. Look at the nice taper on the bracelet. Nothing crazy in terms of the clasp, guys. No special on the fly adjustability or anything like that. But I will say they do the job just perfectly. So in that case, I'm not looking for an upgrade. Of course, I would welcome it as long as it didn't mess up the harmony between the flow of between the links and the clasp. I think that's something that is very underrated by most watch reviewers out there today. A lot of people want to just stat pad and just have every single possible, and honestly, it's funny, like all the stats that everybody's chasing, they're basically asking you to turn every watch into a Rolex with a glide lock bracelet on it. But not every quick adjust clasp flows like the glide lock in terms of, the nature of how organically the taper flows into the bracelet. And look how perfectly that is. I mean, that is just gorgeous. Even down to the links, right? 3 links. Then the accenting, it just flows beautifully, and it is nice and robust still with these mechanical, very nice, I should say milled push button setup. Very, very nice. And again, flows absolutely beautifully, and you're still going to get manual micro adjustment points here, guys. So don't worry, you can get this dialed in terms of size. And if you really want to get, very wild when it comes into some of the functional side, and you want to put this over a long sleeve or something like that, you do have that extension. You can wear it on the outside of your kit if you're, out you know, on a cold day doing some jogging, or, you know, if you're out in an air conditioned cockpit, or maybe one that it isn't, and it's not sealed and it is quite cold up in the atmosphere, you do have that option, which I think is very, very cool. So with that said, let's actually get these pieces off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Hey, still quite good. Now, of course, these are not, you know, deep sea divers by any means, and they're not really required to have such robust lume, but we'll give it a little supercharge here just so you guys can get the full effect. Of course, I didn't take these, you know, if I was to just wear them outside for 10 minutes before filming, they would be much, you know, more luminous because they'd have a full charge. They've just been kind of under the studio lights here, and you can see both look quite excellent. Now, one thing I always like to work in is going to be the a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. And you guys can see they both look quite gorgeous. Of course, it's a little hard to try to get both of them in perfect focus at the same time. The camera's definitely doing some extra work here, but man, these are just, again, just handsome, quite impressive, and quite versatile. I love how non-offensive they are, but at the same time still very stylized in terms of the aesthetic. Like, these are not accidental timepieces. These are very deliberately designed and executed, and I appreciate that, guys. I really, really do. So with that said, we get the lights back on here and just take a look and get into some closing thoughts. Now, while I love both of these watches, again, kind of on their own merits, there is something to be said about the idea of both of them kind of as a pair for collectors that are out there. You have one white dial, one black dial, one simple three-hander, super robust and tough, and then on the other side you have that Panda setup with all the extra bells and whistles in terms of having that flyback capability, having that column wheel set up for the chronograph, and there's just a lot to like. You know, a manual watch, right? A manually wound chronograph, right? You start thinking like that's a must. So many people, endorse the Omega Speedmaster Professional, the Moonwatch, specifically for that reason, right? And then in terms of that everyday adventure sports piece, I mean, when you think of, let's say the Pilot Mark series from IWC, or, like I mentioned earlier, the beautiful and capable and, dress up or downable quality that you get from a Rolex Explorer, that versatility, right? It's something very, very special, and then it does tie to a great amount of heritage at the end of the day. So, both of these watches, I think, again, just on their own, definitely stand the test of time. But I think together, there's something very special. So with that said, let me know what you all think about that down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.